Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So in today's video I would like to talk about both Xbox Series S and Nintendo Switch 2 game optimization. Now for years now we've been hearing how Xbox Series S is underpowered, that it's actually a crap console. Both journalists and a number of developers did complain about the specs of this console. We've been hearing how Xbox Series S has been holding this generation back, that it's limiting developers when it comes to game creation and that kind of stuff. Obviously, I won't be really arguing with developers about how to make games. I'm not a developer. But in reality, we all know that when it comes to game optimization, it's all about how much time you've got to optimize for a particular platform, how much money you've got, how many people you've got involved. So I guess the bigger company, the more money they've got, it's easier for them to dedicate more people actually to make some optimizations and that kind of stuff for Xbox Series S. And of course, I'm not trying to say that Xbox Series S is a perfect console and there's no problems there. It has its own flaws, like not enough memory, for example. That's what developers are actually complaining about for the most part. But at the end of the day, we even seen a number of games that did benefit from these, from the extra work that developers had to do, optimizing for Xbox Series S, and basically the more powerful consoles actually did benefit from these optimizations too. Now, when it comes to Nintendo Switch 2, I did mention that console. It's funny how ever since Nintendo Switch 2 launched, I haven't really noticed any articles or developers complaining about Xbox Series S anymore. I mean, it's somehow like Xbox Series S is a fine console, I guess. The funny thing is, when it comes to both Xbox Series S and Nintendo Switch 2 now, because more and more developers do want to port their games to Nintendo Switch 2, and to be honest with you, specs wise there's not a whole lot of difference there. I mean, there are differences of course, but when it comes to like capabilities, these consoles are quite close. And I know that one is home console, the other one is more of a handheld rather than a proper home console. So there's differences when it comes to power draw and performance and different technologies, different architectures and that kind of stuff. That's fine. Nintendo Switch 2, for example, has way less powerful CPU, less capable. It has more memory. Nintendo Switch 2 has more memory, but it's slower memory. Then GPU wise, I guess Switch may have a little bit of advantage when it comes to like image quality, because it has DLSS and it has more advanced architecture. So that's where Nintendo Switch 2 actually do shine in some games. But in general, I guess there's going to be games that do run and look better on Nintendo. Maybe not necessarily run because of the CPU limitations, but there may be games that do look better on Switch. But then again, there's going to be some games that will look better on Xbox Series X. I mean, two good examples would be, I think one of the Street Fighter games, one of the latest one, actually looks better on Nintendo Switch 2. It has better image quality, I think higher resolution, while I think Cyberpunk actually may have a better image quality as well, not necessarily graphics but image quality. But then Assassin's Creed Shadows, for example, actually have a better graphics on Xbox Series S, right? So I guess it will all depend on I guess different type of games. Now, what about holding this generation back? Because Switch 2 is what it is when it comes to specs. I mean, does it mean that Switch 2 will now hold this generation back? I mean, like I said with Xbox Series S many times before, I don't think so. It's just a matter of dedicating enough money, resources, people, technology into optimizing these particular versions. I understand that it's just extra work for developers, and maybe developers would just not want that to do, because they would want to rather spend time doing something else, fixing bugs or whatever, right? But at the end of the day, it is what it is. If you want to sell more copies of your game, then just deal with that. Stop complaining and start optimizing your games for these particular platforms, I guess, right? Because at the end of the day, when it comes to, especially these days when everything is getting so bloody expensive, these consoles are what they are. So at the end of the day, it's just a set of specs that you have to work with, right? I mean, there's no upgrades. I mean, maybe except PlayStation 5 Pro, but that's another story on its own. But when it comes to Xbox Series S or Nintendo Switch 2, this is what developers will have to work with. And all this talk about holding this generation back is just pile of bullshit. Basically, it's just extra work for developers. That's why developers didn't really like it, right? I understand why they're complaining, but complain to Microsoft, not to gamers. We don't care whether you like it or not. Just do your job and do the best you can do to optimize your game for Xbox. I mean, at the end of the day, when it comes to Xbox Series S or, Switch 2, it's all comes down to, limiting number of frames to 30 frames per second a lot of times, or just cutting out some of the graphical settings like ray tracing or some other, stuff, right? Then games just work, right? I mean, there's people that don't necessarily care about things like ray tracing or 60 frames per second, and they are totally fine with playing games at 30 frames per second at 1080p, right? That's not me. Xbox Series S is not a console for me, to be honest with you, even though I did own one back in the days, but that was more for my son, not me. And he did enjoy it, playing games like Roblox and Minecraft and Fortnite for the most part, and these games run great on this console. So at the end of the day, just like Xbox Series S did not hold this generation back, that's not going to be the case with Nintendo Switch 2. Developers will just have to find resources to optimize, or hire other companies to make ports for them, right? That happens a lot as well. And so I wouldn't really worry about both Xbox Series S and Nintendo Switch 2. Funny enough, I think that the fact that Switch 2 exists, even though next generation is just around the corner, I think that both this generation of consoles and Xbox Series S in particular may actually benefit from it as well, because there's going to be more and more developers that will want to make ports of their games for Switch 2, and as they optimize already, I mean, they may just do the same for Xbox Series S at the end of the day. And to be honest with you, with current gen being like the beginning of this generation being really, there was this how do they call it, I'm talking about this shift from one generation to the other. There's this period where games usually come out for like previous generation and current generation, and that period was very long. I think this same thing will happen next generation. Nobody will just drop support for this generation console once PlayStation 6 and next gen Xbox are out. I mean, at the end of the day, I think that like even to this day, there's still some games that do come to PlayStation 4 or Xbox Series or Xbox One consoles. Xbox One, not so much, because Xbox One was actually pretty weak when it comes to specs, but PlayStation 4. So I think there was a talk, some sort of talk about one game that was supposed to be next gen only, as in this gen only. And I think there was a news talking about the fact that because there's still a lot of people on PlayStation 4, developers are thinking about porting their game to PlayStation 4 console still, because there's still like tens of millions people playing games on that console, right? So I think, I guess the concept of generation is kind of fading away a little bit. Like, there's not going to be like a proper cut out date for, okay, now we're doing just next gen stuff, right? It's going to be very fluid, but it is what it is. So anyway, Xbox Series S did not hold this generation back. In fact, in many cases, that extra work that had to be put into optimize, Xbox Series S optimizations actually did work great and did improve games on the bigger consoles. And I think same will probably be said about Switch 2 games in the future. So yeah, I wouldn't really worry about it. Just enjoy games, the way you want. And when it comes to image quality on Xbox Series S, just play games in 30 frames per second, then the image quality will be much better. I mean, it is what it is. It's unfortunately, when it comes to Xbox Series S, it's either this or that. So you want to play 60 frames per second games in 60 frames per second. Yeah, well, image quality will suffer. If you want better image quality, just reduce your game to 30 frames per second. There's quality performance options in most titles, and you're done, right? So anyway, guys, that's the video. Hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comment section below what you think about it, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.